We have different windows of tolerance for different things, but that's what SSP does, is it widens your window of tolerance. It kind of changes the way that the world is landing on you, if that makes sense. We think about stress. Stress isn't good or bad. What we want to know, and when we talk about heart rate variability, that's a measure of how is your body responding to stress. Is it able to be dynamic and be flexible, or is it not? And a lot of that has to do with how our vagus is functioning. And so SSP is it's a huge support for the nervous system through the auditory system.
If I told you there was a passive intervention that could help your kiddo and your family increase the window of tolerance and the way the world is received, would you believe me? Well, today I'm sharing a conversation on exactly that. It's called the Safe and Sound Protocol, and it's essentially a therapeutic listening program designed to support emotional regulation and neuroception. I was first introduced to SSP by a therapist our family was working with, and I wanted to know more about how it works and how it can support kids who have what Dr. Mona Delahooke refers to as a less sturdy nervous system platform. I reached out to educator, author, and bodyworker Autum Romano to join me for this conversation, as she's passionate about nervous system regulation as a foundation for transformative whole health. Autumn, who is also neurodivergent and twice exceptional, is known for her intuitive healing approach. She recently collaborated with Dr. Stephen Porges on a case study for his upcoming book on the benefits of the Safe and Sound Protocol. And last year, she published her own children's book called Body Wisdom and the Polyvagal Theory, which introduces polyvagal theory in an easy-to-understand way. In this conversation, we talked about what neuroception is and why it's critical to helping our kids develop that felt sense of safety, as well as what the Safe and Sound Protocol actually is. Autumn explains how it essentially repatterns the brain's nervous system through listening, creates a safe space for brain and body integration, and leads to impactful, long-lasting results. This is a fascinating conversation about polyvagal, neuroception, and nervous system support that definitely left me wanting to know and experience more. I hope you get a lot out of it. Hey, Autumn, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so delighted and thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Good. I love having guests on the show who are delighted and thrilled to be here. That's a great way to start. I would love if you could take a few minutes and tell us more about yourself. I've already read your formal bio, but give us your mission, your personal why, what you're really excited about and passionate about in the work that you do.
Thank you. Okay, well, body, always the body. I started my training and then career in bodywork, started with massage therapy 28 years ago. So I was in high school, and unsatisfied doesn't even quite capture it. I wanted something different. I wanted something more. And before there was concurrent enrollment, I created my own concurrent enrollment and went to massage school my senior year of high school, and was so in love with the body and its complexity, its intelligence, and that's just never stopped for me. You weave in my own understanding of what it means to be neurodivergent. I'm still totally trying to understand my own individual neurodivergent and where that fits in the scope of, my family of origin, the family I've created, always learning about that. I was identified as gifted as a third grader, but then apparently took myself out of gifted and talented. So I didn't really have that experience. And then understanding what does it mean as a parent to help support a person who the world wasn't really built for. I never found parenting hard, but just trying to parent my son in the world was hard, the way that the world was. So now my work is a combination of, my lived experience and then everything I've studied as a professional, all the help I was looking for as a parent, and how does that all converge together to do this work now? Finding the Safe and Sound Protocol and Polyvagal Theory was really, really, really helpful because it sort of answered all these questions that I had and didn't have answers for. And so when I found Dr. Porges and his work in the polyvagal theory, I was like, oh, okay, this checks. This makes sense with all the things that sort of hadn't made sense to me from a body standpoint. And that became a new reference point for me, and then went on to study more trauma-informed practices and bring all that together. So yeah, it's body wisdom. And I think of polyvagal theory as a user manual to the body. I want to introduce people's bodies to them and be like, oh my gosh, your body's so cool. Like, let me help you understand it, or heal your relationship with it, or create a relationship with it, or what are the ways that we can understand ourselves in relationship and use all this information for good, because we already have it. Like, we have these bodies, we have these super smart nervous systems. Let's use it to our advantage. And so that usually looks like learning more. And it's not just book knowledge. It's learning about your body. And again, this own unique nervous system that you have.
There's something you said when you were sharing some of your story that jumped out at me. You said that you never found parenting hard, but you found parenting in a world that wasn't really set up for who your children are. That was hard for you. Can you say more about that? Like, as a parent, you were like, yeah, I've totally got this. And like, where you kind of noticed that tension?
Yeah, it's so painful, honestly. I only have one child, one son, he's 20. And I don't know how old he was when that crystallized for me. I was like, it is not hard to be his mom. It's just the context of the world that makes it hard, and just what that meant to create a world for us first, for the three of us. Especially, gosh, when you think about polyvagal theory, you're like, oh, community and people. And well, geez, when you're raising a neurodivergent kiddo, I mean, if we're going to talk about neuroception, you get so many signals of shame from the world that you're doing it wrong and your child is wrong. And so to try and create safety and connection inside of your family, and then continue to be in a world that is judging you, whether they are implicitly or explicitly judging you, they are, you know it. And so it's weird because you're trying to keep this open heart, but you have to build like a moat around yourself and your family, all the while usually not even knowing that's what you're doing. Right? So I don't know how old he was when I realized, like, oh, hey, this isn't him. Like, it is not hard to be his parent. It's just these cultural expectations I was given that are wrong, that are unhelpful, or that need to be recreated or need to be tweaked. And where is the compassion for that experience? You know, and I'm so glad now that there is more support for these families and these kiddos. There just wasn't really that much 20 years ago. And I'm sure even more when you look farther back in time. So yeah, it's never been hard to be his mom.
Yeah, I have a 19-year-old. So I think we were raising our kids and probably discovering their neurodivergence at about the same time. And there weren't a lot of resources. Nobody was really talking about this. It was all about fixing your kids' behavior so that they could be in these environments that were so difficult for them to be who they were and to show up as they are. So yeah, very different time. But I imagine that you were doing this work and were so on this path of being more tuned in and thinking about the body experience probably primed you much earlier, just personally, than I was. I think I kind of tried to fit things and fix things for a long time because I had no awareness of this other experience.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when I look back, I think that yes, in a way, I think I was like doing the behaviors, but I don't know how much I really settled into the belief that it was right, if that makes sense. It's like I knew intuitively, I understood things weren't working and I needed to do something different, but I think I was still probably terrified. So that was pretty hard to bridge that. Yeah, it didn't feel like I was moving from a lot of strength, more desperation.
Relatable.
Yeah. Right. And sometimes that's just how it goes. Now it's different. It's way better and easier. But yeah, I did know. But I think, again, it wasn't super crystallized knowledge. It became more so. For sure.
I would love to pivot then, and I want to start by talking about neuroception, which you mentioned earlier. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll do that. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Synbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Synbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon, and that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Synbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Synbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Synbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off. During this month of planning and organization for big transitions, rhythms and routines have been absolutely essential for our physical and emotional well-being. So Green Chef nights are reliably and predictably a good night. We know the ingredients will be fresh and prepped, the instructions easy to follow, and the meal delicious. We're all still talking about last week's turkey tacos with mango chimichurri sauce, refried beans, and Monterey Jack cheese. Green Chef contributes to a healthy lifestyle with easy and delicious menus like fresh seasonal salads and grain bowls. And with over 80 weekly meal and market options, plus rotating options to suit a variety of lifestyles, whether Mediterranean, plant-based, calorie-smart, keto, protein-packed, gluten-free, there are always plenty of options to choose from. Whatever you select, you'll get farm-fresh ingredients, organic whole fruits and veggies, and premium proteins, all delivered straight to your door. I love those 4 words. Straight to my door. Oh, and one more thing I love about Green Chef, they have an app, which means it's easy to manage meal preferences and delivery from your phone if you want to. And I, for one, want to. I am in that mode where I'm making the most of little moments like waiting in line at the pharmacy or for the F train to pull into the station to tackle all of those to-dos. So the convenience of an app is key for me. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. Earlier, when you were first talking about your work, you used the term neuroception. I would love if you could explain what neuroception is, so we're at level playing field here and we even know what we're talking about.
So neuroception is a term coined by Dr. Porges. So Dr. Porges is the creator of Polyvagal Theory. He first published in the mid-90s, and he realized that there was this physiological process happening. He understood it in his research, and he named it. So he coined the term neuroception. The definition is detection without awareness. We all know neuroception and we use it. We just don't call it that. So like if you think of your spidey sense or, oh, they gave me a bad feeling, or I got a good feeling about that. Your gut, my gut says no, my gut says yes. So that's all neuroception. So neuroception, when we think about it physiologically, our vagus nerve is the largest cranial nerve in our body. The Latin meaning is wanderer. Resmo Menakem, in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, he calls it the soul nerve. And it's this, really remarkable nerve in that it goes everywhere. So the vagus is in our face. The vagus is helping determine the pitch of my voice. It's helping determine how my ears are functioning. My heart, we have a vagal brake on our heart. It innervates the diaphragm and then a lot of our subdiaphragmatic organs. So 80% of the vagus is afferent, meaning it is sensing the environment and giving that information to the brain. So a lot of times we think nerves, all the information starts in the brain and then that's going to the body. Well, no, there's also a whole lot of information that starts in the body, goes to the brain. So 80% of the vagus is the body is getting information, giving it to the brain, and then the brain responds. So a whole lot of our vagus nerve is deciding all the time. The main question is, am I safe or not? Am I getting cues of threat? Am I getting cues of safety? And the really interesting thing is that it's subjective. So you could have 10 people in your room right now, and they're going to be neurocepting the exact same external stimuli differently. Neurodivergence really comes into this. Maybe somebody has more sensitive hearing and they're going to really pick up, maybe there's a hum from electronics, or maybe there's something in the neighborhood, a trash truck. And that sound might be giving their nervous system a sign of danger or a sign of threat. So it's really fascinating how our neuroception is very individual, but yet it influences, everything is a strong word, but a lot. It influences a lot, because then if our nervous system is operating from this place of I'm safe or I'm under threat, this is literally like how our sensory integration system is working. If our brain is able to kind of take that information and learn, right? We have to be safe to be curious and to learn and to gather new information. Again, how our heart is beating. So our actual well-being, are we resting and digesting? Are we digesting our food at the moment? Or are we not? Is our blood shunted to our core? So all of these things are influenced by our neuroception, and we don't have a choice because neuroception is always happening, and we can't really influence it because it's detection without awareness. So it's powerful.
Yeah, I've never heard it explained that way. And even the way you described the vagus nerve, that's just so helpful. I've dived into Deb Dana's work and have explored this obviously quite a lot through Tilled Parenting and the guests I've had on the show. And it's still something I'm trying to wrap my head around,
Same.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I know today we are going to spend some time talking about the Safe and Sound protocol. That's why I initially reached out to you. But before we go into that specifically, I know that this body work is what you do, and you probably do it in a lot of different ways. So you just said that it's something that we can't change, but we can understand our individual neuroception process. So can you talk about when you are working with people or neurodivergent adults, kids, or supporting nervous systems, what are we trying to do? How are we trying to do that work to help them feel safer?
Simple question, simple answer, right? So it depends on if it's like remote or in person. I love it when young people come into my office, and I will give them as many choices as I can think of to help, first of all, just sort of like manipulate the environment. Little things like my therapy dog Banksy always says hi. I'm like, oh, this is my therapy dog Banksy. Would you like him in the room or not? Do you want him to jump on the table with you, or shall I put him in the crate? So I think first, by just sort of naming that, wow, we're all a little bit different, and let's just take a couple moments to customize the environment. You know what I mean? And, sometimes too many questions are like a bad plan. So I'm going to also be reading into that. Do they want the aromatherapy diffuser on or off? Do they like the music? Can I turn it up? Should I turn it down? I'm always going to typically I'll have some sort of table warmer on. Do they like that temperature? Do they want it higher or lower? You start on these more common practices that don't seem weird. And then you get a little bit farther in. You get a little bit closer and a little bit more intimate and individual for that person. If I have a person who I notice they're not making a lot of eye contact with me, I will not offer unblinking eye contact with them, because that is not helpful. I'll look near them and then maybe I'll glance at them. And so I'm already I'm influencing their nervous system by responding with like actual things that I am in charge of. So if we think about neuroception, that neuroception is detection without awareness. Well, now we have our interoceptive ability, right? So our ability to understand our body from the inside. So we can understand what we're neurocepting after it's happened, right? One of the easiest ways to understand a body is it an opening or is it tightening, right? So if you walk into a situation and it's like, you're feeling a tightness, then I will know my body is neurocepting and I'm having some neuroception of danger. What can I do to resource myself? So that's just self-regulation. Maybe I need to take a couple deep breaths. Maybe I need to go near a window. I like natural light. Maybe that will help me. Something like that. You could get a drink of water. Swallowing really helps the ventral branch, the sort of safety branch. When I'm working with someone, I'm also going to offer as many cues of safety as I can think of. So again, maybe changing my eye contact. You can kind of tell if somebody wants to make eye contact with you. And so it's sort of like, don't boss them around, right? Don't try and get them to offer you more eye contact than their nervous system wants to offer. And then I think in a lot of ways with younger people, it's I think of sovereignty. I think of just, following their lead. This is a huge one. Not trying to get them over to me, but I'm going to go to them. So I'm going to go to them and I'm going to try and create as much safety as possible where they are. So that's, again, kind of implicit and explicit. And, I'll ask some questions. If I have someone who's coming in for body work along with the safe and sound protocol, I'll be like, oh, do you want to undress and hop under the sheets? Do you want to stay dressed and be on top? Do you want to cover up with the blanket or do you want to be on top of the blanket? Little things like that. It's this dance of I understand you're a sovereign being and I want to accommodate and support that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love the word sovereign. I've been doing this show for almost 8 years. I don't know if it's ever come up in a conversation on this show. And it's such a powerful word when you think about our kids. So many interesting things you said. Also, I love that idea of noticing if you're opening or tightening. I think of this idea if something feels shackles on or shackles off. And it's that to me, that's how I respond. And it's super clear when you start thinking about it that way. And I also love neurocepting as a verb. So that's really interesting to think about. The goal then in the work that you're doing with people, it is to help them understand the way that they experience neuroception so that they can support themselves as they move through the world. So they can have a deeper awareness of what's happening and so that they have tools and resources to feel safer. Am I getting that right?
Well, right. And it's co-regulation. So co-regulation is using, hopefully I can find enough safety. It doesn't have to be this binary safe, not safe. I'm going to hopefully have enough safety in my nervous system that I can then offer that to them. So that is co-regulation. And so hopefully I'm offering them enough safety through my nervous system that then they're getting enough safety. So then what's happening together is co-regulation. So for me, what's interesting is that I am not going to top load my sessions with a whole lot of psychoeducation unless they specifically want that. And then I will go for it. But otherwise, most people are not super regulated when they walk in. And that is not the time to give them a lot of science. Again, sovereign, right? They are sovereign beings. They have the ability to regulate and to govern, right? The definition I use of sovereignty is the ability to govern oneself. So I will answer the questions when they ask. So typically I'm giving a lot of science in very small coded kind of words, because really I just want to start with the hands-on portion or the listening portion, or if we're doing that together, because then they're going to be more regulated. They're going to have more safety. They're going to have more of this ventral branch of their vagus. And then they're going to go why did that feel different? Or I'll give them a couple of little things to take home with. So the interesting thing about my work is, yes, I use words, but mostly it's just body stuff. It's just felt experience so that their body has time to be in this ventral place, supported hopefully through touch. If they're going to be listening at home, then maybe with a parent or caregiver. Co-regulation through touch is so, so, so powerful. So if I have someone who's coming in and they don't really like massage and they are not pumped about this portion, I'll start somewhere small, how do you feel about a foot rub? And if they're like, meh, it's okay, great. I start at the feet. And then I can just, I'll be watching their face, but, I'll give them about 3 or 4 minutes. Is this okay? And they're like, yeah, because I'm also teaching them safe touch. You just start in the edge. It's this Venn diagram of They just have to be okay enough to begin sometimes. I'm talking about like a twice exceptional young person. Some people, they just can't wait. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm so ready. I don't have to start on the edges. You just hop right in and they're ready and you're ready and it's fine.
So cool. Thank you. So let's take a quick break and then I want to explore the Safe and Sound protocol. Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered, the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything. Because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it, and anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
Okay, so when I first reached out to you, it was because I know you do a lot of work with the Safe and Sound protocol. And this is something that I had been introduced to through a therapist who was working with our family several months ago. And that was my first experience with it. And then it's come up in different places and conversations in my community. And so I want to learn more about it. And I thought listeners might want to know more about it. Can you explain, as a starting point, what is the Safe and Sound protocol?
The Safe and Sound protocol, or we call it sometimes SSP, it's a 5-hour auditory intervention created by Dr. Porges in his lab. So it's interesting because it's music, but it's literally made in a lab. So that's pretty fun. It's also an acoustic vagal stimulator. So I've talked a little bit about this ventral branch. This is not neuroplasticity where you're like working hard to create new neural pathways. No. We have 3 main autonomic nervous system states. And one of them is this ventral state. And so you're like literally plugging it in. You're saying, okay, perhaps this is offline. We are plugging it in. We're getting it online. So sometimes Dr. Porges says you're picking up your train and you're putting it on a different track. All of the track is already there. So sometimes because of our neurodivergence or because of our trauma history or both, it's easy for the ventral branch to get offline for a whole host of different reasons. And so what's pretty phenomenal about the Safe and Sound protocol is it's a passive intervention. All you do is, if headphones are tolerated, then you listen to music. And there's several different playlists. There's a children's playlist that has Disney songs. There's an adult playlist that's like a lot of songs from the radio that you'd recognize, sort of like a playlist or a mixtape. There's classical, and there's a new one that's a little bit more like ambient spa music. Ideally, you're with someone you're supported. Like I listened this morning to prepare. I was home alone, so I listened with my dog. So he is a mammal. He has a vagus nerve, and we can co-regulate by just sort of snuggling on the couch. I can pet him, and our nervous systems are supporting each other during the listening. I found SSP as a parent, as a desperate parent. And so I first did the intervention, just facilitating it for my son and my husband and myself. And then later I had an opportunity to train. And when I did the training, the main foundation of the training is to provide co-regulation. So after I read the whole Polyvagal Theory, understood physiologically what co-regulation is, I was like, oh, this is therapeutic touch. This is massage therapy at its very best. The entire thing is co-regulation. So to me, I was like, well, this makes sense. If I'm supposed to be co-regulating with them, like I want to use touch. So I started putting them together, which was sort of a brand new thing. There's more people doing it now, which is good. So that's when folks are coming and listening with me in person. I also do like remote listening for folks who can't come into my office. And so it's 5 hours. So every now and then you have someone who can complete it in the original way of 1 hour, 5 days in a row. That's pretty rare. Sometimes you'll do 30 minutes for 10 days in a row. Sometimes you'll do 15 minutes. It just depends. I mean, that's why you need a provider, is you need someone to help you track the nervous system. I always tell people, like, you're not in charge. I'm not in charge. Your nervous system is like our wonderful wise guide. And I can tell them, like, are you feeling like you're checked out, or are you irritable while they're listening, to understand if the nervous system has had too much. But really, it's you're either getting the ventral branch kind of back online, or maybe it's a kind of a brand new thing and you're teaching the body how to sometimes it's tolerating safety. If you have it like an intense trauma history, the safety won't feel peaceful. So sometimes you have to like learn how to do that. And sometimes it's really straightforward. It just depends.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I did it this morning for 30 minutes with my cat. Haskell was co-regulating with me, but you describe it as passive intervention. And it is, in that you can be working on a puzzle, or you can do drawing or coloring something while you're listening to it. As I'm listening, of course, my mind's like, well, what's happening right now? Like, I'm very curious about what's going on as I'm listening. Could you talk more about what's happening inside your brain as a result? And then what does the protocol look like ongoing?
So you're using the auditory system first to get to the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. I just went to a nerve lecture by a colleague and friend, Gil Headley, who had just dissected out the entire nervous system, peripheral nerves also. And hearing him talk about the vagus is wonderful, because he's like, oh, well, here's the vagus, but then here's this nerve. Are they separate or are they not? That's the interesting thing, is that when you're talking about actual gross anatomy, it's like if you have a braid of hair, it's like, when is this strand separate from this strand? And so what's happening with what Dr. Porges has created in his lab is music that is an actual workout for the neural system and an actual workout for the auditory system. So he has chosen songs that will kind of survive all the low frequency sounds and the high frequency sounds being removed from the get-go. So you're only going to have the sounds, the envelope of the human voice. So these mid-range frequency sounds, and then he's going to kind of tease them away and then bring them back. So the volume changes quite a bit. And what's happening is the stapedius muscle of the middle ear, it's just doing push-ups over and over and over again. And so when that muscle works better, then we can bring in sounds of human voice, which are sounds of safety, and we can deflect low frequency sounds, which are sounds of danger. So a really simple way to think about this is, if you and I were going to meet at like a busy coffee shop and I'm talking to you, how well are your ears going to be able to hear me Or are they hearing someone talking to the barista 10 feet behind me ordering? So it's really fascinating how our ear function has a lot to do with mechanics, just straight up mechanics. Maybe somebody had an ear injury because of burst eardrums or repeated ear infections when they were a child. All of that is going to influence the mechanics of the ear. And so this safe and sound protocol helps the stapedius muscle do its job better, basically. So when it can do its job better, then the ear becomes more dynamic, and then that helps support a nervous system that's more dynamic. Another simple way that your audience has probably heard about this window of tolerance, right? And so what happens is SSP widens our window of tolerance. It kind of always widens the window of tolerance to some capacity for every person. We have different windows of tolerance for different things, but that's what SSP does, is it widens your window of tolerance. It kind of changes the way that the world is landing on you, if that makes sense. We think about stress. Stress isn't good or bad. What we want to know, and when we talk about heart rate variability, that's a measure of how is your body responding to stress. Is it able to be dynamic and be flexible, or is it not? And a lot of that has to do with how our vagus is functioning. And so SSP is it's a huge support for the nervous system through the auditory system.
That's so helpful. Thank you for explaining that. So for a listener who's interested in exploring SSP, how would they go about using this approach, and how do we get our kids bought into it? If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Okay. So if they want to, there are several practitioners out there. I think there's maybe between 2,000 and 3,000 of us worldwide. I always think that we just need to look at what works for us, what works for our people. Maybe it's possible to do it in person locally. A lot of times with families, it's best for the parent to be the facilitator because they're already going to have co-regulation. And sometimes these kiddos, the last thing they want is a brand new provider in their life. That's not helpful for anybody. So a lot of times what I do when I'm supporting people, and they can always listen with me through the home program is a month long, and I just coach the parent through it. And so we meet every week. What's so cool about parents and caregivers is they are so good at understanding their kids, even if they don't know the science. And I don't need them to know the science. I can explain the science. I just want to know, what are the sticky parts of your day? Is it getting to school? Is it brushing your teeth? And then we'll just say, okay, let's follow that. Let's do SSP. And then just tell me, are the sticky spots getting worse, better? Are you noticing anything else? We can kind of just watch this factor that seems to be the tricky thing and see if we're getting any ease, if we're widening the window of tolerance. And when it comes back to, getting buy-in, you don't really need buy-in. You need just enough compliance, honestly, to get them to say yes. They don't have to be excited. They don't have to believe in it. I think you either, depending on your kiddo, have to add something, an incentive, or remove something that's already hard. So for example, and usually during the intake process, we can already discover this. It's like, is there something that they would really love to have more of? And you never know. Sometimes this kiddo's like, oh, they would love to have one-on-one time with me. Maybe they have a busy family. It's like, okay, how are we going to find 15, 30 minutes a day for just the two of you? What would they like to do? They would love it if I played Legos with them. Great. They want to snuggle in my bed. Great. We're going to get a paint by numbers kit and we're going to take it out and we're only going to color during SSP and then we'll put it away. So it becomes this SSP only activity that we complete together. For maybe a kiddo that has more PDA tendencies, you really, again, respect and understand their sovereignty and maybe try, because it is a demand, to remove a demand. Okay, for instance, maybe brushing teeth is really hard. Well, what's really going to happen if you don't brush your teeth twice a day? Maybe it's like, hey, you can skip brushing your teeth at night if you listen to this. It's whatever that parent's comfortable with. Money, if money works, after completion, I'll take you to this thing, or I'll buy you that expensive Lego set, or I'll just straight up hand you cash, or you can get ice cream every night after you finish it. Or, I think that I really try to just help each parent find something that already works within their family culture and within their integrity and what works for them. But I think simply saying, I want you to do this is unfair and not respectful of their sovereignty. It's a big ask. And so I think we have to make it worth their time by either being like, oh, yeah, I know that you hate emptying the litter box. Guess what? For the entire time you're doing the safe and sound protocol, I will empty the litter box because you're asking something difficult, or maybe they love it.
Before we wrap up, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote, Body Wisdom and the Polyvagal Theory. You shared this with me when it first came out, which I think was during COVID, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. Right at the beginning. Yeah, I wrote it right before 2019 and then kind of got it out in the world 2020.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that and who the intended audience is for that.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. I wrote it for everybody. I put it in the form of a children's book because my son's super dyslexic. And so again, thinking about like, what's like a trauma-informed, polyvagal-informed approach to books? So I was honestly trying to make it friendly and like inviting. And so a children's book seemed that way. So it's not just for children. I just formatted it that way to hopefully like let it slide under the radar of just all the reasons that books are hard or science is hard or something new is hard. So I decided to just kind of format it in like the friendliest way I could think of. I used the Open Dyslexic font and my son Foster illustrated it. And what's really cool is I knew the illustrations really, really mattered, but again, it was more intuitive. It wasn't a concrete thing. And then now it's used in a local preschool that my sister is a early childhood education special education director, and she uses it in her program, and the pre-readers love it. Like they love it, especially the kiddos that have kind of like big behavior, that have a lot of fight or flight behavior. They love it. They'll like carry it around because there's this red, angry, like exploding robot. They'll just kind of like carry it around like a little wubby. So it's turned out that it's also great for pre-readers, I think, and non-readers, just because the message carries through without text, but does have text. And yeah, it's an introduction to polyvagal theory. So it's for everybody, but through the form of story and connection. It's a simple, short read, but I do have at the beginning, I go into a little more science and a little more like a user guide for either parents, caregivers, teachers.
It's great, again, because as I mentioned earlier, polyvagal can be a complicated topic. And your book really does kind of make it accessible and breaks it down in a way that people of all ages can really get it. Yeah, it's great.
I would so much rather everybody understand a tiny bit than a few people knowing all of it. I mean, this is our bodies. Like, this isn't secret information for a few.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Well, I know we've gone over, but I really appreciate getting into all of this. I think it's fascinating. More and more of my conversations on the show and more of the books that I'm reading are centered around this idea of interoception and neuroception and polyvagal and the nervous system. And it's exciting to me. So I'm really happy to have gotten to go deep with you today. Can you let listeners know where they can connect with you and how they might work from you, even if they aren't local to where you do your body work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Debbie. I have a website. So Autum Romano, there's no N on Autumn. So AUTUMROMANO.com. I have a lot of free videos there. Pretty soon I will have on-demand videos for Parenting for Connection, like a parenting course. They can learn more information about how to sign up for Safe and Sound Protocol with me, the remote program at home. They can contact me through there, through email. I do have Instagram page. I'm on there a little bit. I try and offer some free support and a lot of like follow along videos. So that's my favorite, is teaching hands-on practices, because again, I only get to see a few people a week in person, but there are some pretty simple ways for us to use touch in our own lives to help support our body. And that's really my favorite.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. And listeners, as always, I will have links in the show notes page to all the resources. And yeah, there's a lot of resources on your website, a lot of videos, and it's a great place. If this conversation has sparked you and you're curious to know more, definitely check out Autumn's website. So thanks so much for breaking this down, for answering my many questions all over the place and explaining SSP to us. Super fascinating. So thank you, Autumn.
It's a real dream come true. I mean, Debbie, I remember like exactly where I was standing in my house the first time I heard you, and I found Differently Wired and Tilt Parenting. And it was like a real moment of like, oh my God, it's not just me. I thought I was like, the only person in the whole world trying to find a new, better way. So this is a real full circle moment for me. So thank you.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. To learn more about today's guest and the resources we talked about, check out the extensive show notes page on Tilt Parenting. There you'll find key takeaways, links to all the resources mentioned, and even a full transcript of our conversation. Just go to tiltparenting.com/podcast and select this episode. If you're looking for personal support from me and connection with the phenomenal community of parents raising neurodivergent kids, join us in the recently rebooted Differently Wired Club. The new Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Go to tiltparenting.com/club to learn more. The Tilt Parenting Podcast is hosted by me, Debbie Reber, author of Differently Wired and the founder of Tilt Parenting, and was edited by Andrea Curtis Amasquita. To support this show, please join my Patreon campaign where you can set up a small monthly contribution. Just go to patreon.com/tiltparenting to learn more. If you want to follow Tilt on social media, you can find us at Tilt Parenting on Instagram and Facebook. And lastly, please take a minute to leave a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps this show stay visible so others can find it more easily. And that's all for this week. Stay safe, stay well, and take good care. And for more information about any of the parenting resources Tilt offers, visit tiltparenting.com.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.